Brother Derek. This brother is a former retired naval officer and has been a state representative for
about to go into my fifth
fifth term. And so every time we invite him to come down and share about what's going on politically, he gets here and is always focused on trying to bring whatever information that they have happening under the dome and in other places back to the brothers so that we can dissect it in our own way, in our own time. So I just like for him to start the conversation, and then we're going to open it up around Project 2025 and its impact on where the direction that this thing is going if they're successful in getting Project 2025 implemented. So if you would define it for us a little bit, and then we'll go from there. Thank you. Absolutely. Appreciate you.
Hello, brothers. Hey. Oh, come on. Hello, brothers. Hey. See, although my roots are Georgia, I was born and raised in New York. And so if you know anything about New York, we talk loud. And our whole goal is because there are 11 million people in New York City, so we want to make sure we are heard and understood. It's always great to be in the black man's lab, and I emphasize that because I know my brother said he's from CNN. If media can just take a picture of this, if the media can take a picture of this, because they do not believe it exists. I'm just keeping it real, because they often look at us through a title. They don't look at us as a husband or a father. And if you don't think what I'm saying is real, this past weekend, Tyreek Hill. Okay? And so when we have this opportunity to gather in such a place, it is a holy place. Because those who are no longer with us, one gentleman that I will evoke his name, and that's James Earl Jones.
Yeah, sure.
He is now one of our ancestors. So the baton, brothers, are being passed on to us because they fought long and hard, out loud, for a reason and a purpose. Now, by a show of hands, tell me if you heard of Project 2025. Okay? All right. By a show of hands, who think Project 2025 is a myth? By a show of hands, who think Project 2025 has already been implemented? Parts of it. Okay? And so if I may take a point of personal privilege, because Project 2025 did not just start just 2 years ago. In fact, it started in 1981. And then it was designed for a president then in 1981. Mentioning no names. They had 3,000 pages. And those 3,000 pages, brothers, we're talking about family values and patriotism and small government and being fiscally conservative, all the things that sounds real good to the ear. But it had absolutely nothing to do with those of us in this room. Fast forward from 1981, this 3,000-page document in 2021 was condensed from 3,000 pages to 922 pages. And I've got to 2/3 of this manifesto, and not one page, not one paragraph, and not one sentence is in there for us. If I may, Brother Davis, take this a little bit higher. See, because Project 2025, brothers, is going after the Constitution. And when you read it, and I'm no lawyer, but I know some good lawyers. And I've learned in watching them, because you got to read between the lines. And Project 2025, if you don't take anything out of that door, There are 4 things that Project 2025 is going after. 4 things. Y'all ready? They're going after the 13th Amendment. Anybody know what the 13th Amendment is? Abolish slavery. Now, you want to say, well, I don't know about that, Derek. Abolish slavery. But they're talking about mass deportation of 18 to 20 million immigrants. Okay? They don't define who's an immigrant. We can be classified, brothers, as an immigrant if the wrong person is in the executive office. The 14th Amendment is next. Anybody know what the 14th Amendment? Citizenship through due process. Have you ever heard of this thing about Dred Scott? Have you heard that it was mentioned just last week? Who did they use that against? Yeah, that is. But I want to narrow this down. I want to be laser focused. I'm a retired naval officer. Kamala Harris. Now, if you did not know any better and you just landed on planet Earth on yesterday and they're trying to use a Dred Scott case against a sister that's running for president, if you draw the connection and if you read the chapter in Project 2025, they going after citizenship. But they really don't understand that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment annul the Dred Scott case. Right? And if the individual that said this understood what they were saying, that we already had a black president. So we already have precedents in the United States. But they're bringing this up for a reason, because they're drawing a parallel with Project 2025. The next amendment that they're going after is the 15th Amendment. Anybody know what the 15th Amendment is? The right to vote. In July of 2013, the Supreme Court did a very interesting thing in July 2013. Anybody know what they did? They removed Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. Bingo. So here's the case, brothers. So just a little bit of this Project 2025 has already been underway. Just a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court did something else around immunity. Presidential immunity. Now, there are 2 types of immunities, right? He can't answer the question. There is 2 types of immunities. Anybody know what they are? No, not official act. It's something that's a little bit, take it up a little bit more. Not diplomatic. No, so you got qualified immunity, right? But there's one that's higher than that. Sovereign immunity. Who said that? Sovereign immunity. And in Project 2025, they want to give law enforcement officers sovereign immunity. It will make his job very difficult. Because y'all remember Ahmaud Arbery, the one that a brother just jogging in his own neighborhood, 3 o'clock, right? He wasn't carrying no television. He was just jogging in his own neighborhood. If those 3 individuals had sovereign immunity, he couldn't do his job.
What does sovereign immunity mean?
Absolutely. So it's the difference in qualified immunity is what they currently have created, right? They create a qualified immunity to protect law enforcement and public officials. So immunity is that you would be prevented from being held civilly liable and in certain aspects criminally liable. So you're untouchable, right? So basically right now in policing is the only way for us to overcome qualified immunity is we have to show that the officer violated what's called a clearly established constitutional right. If we can't prove that, then the officer's granted qualified immunity. So that's why you see if an officer shoots somebody on accident, right? When I say accident, they say, oh, I thought his phone was a gun. Or I told him to drop it, even though it was the wrong person. They were pursuing a different person, but they saw somebody with a gun and they shoot him. Qualified immunity protects them from that. That's right. Because because it's not a clearly established constitutional law that they're violating. So that's why this presidential election is so critical, because they get to appoint all of the federal judges for lifetimes. Right? So it ends up being a 30 or 40 year, you think it's just one election, but it reverberates for 30 or 40 years. You got these young, super conservative white folk who are on the bench that knock every case out. And so we're the ones that are most often getting harmed by law enforcement, and we don't have an avenue to try to bring a claim. And I'm just talking, only 2% get criminally prosecuted, y'all. 2% in all of the country, 2%. So if you don't have a criminal route, you don't have a civil route, it's open season. So that's the significance. And if they go above qualified immunity, we're there's nothing for me to litigate. There's nothing for us to litigate.
Right. So. Yeah, okay. No, I appreciate that. So I'm going to circle back around. So, but I want to just put a exclamation mark. The reason why I'm highlighting this, because it's in writing in Project 2025 about sovereign immunity. We typically do not hear or see that word. They did not write that word in their manifesto in 1981. The reason why it shows up in Project 2025, because the author of Project 2025 is by, I was going to say gentleman, but I want to be 100% authentic. This fool, by the name of Kevin Roberts, did a dissertation for his PhD in 2003 about the control of the enslavement of the Negro in Louisiana. So out of all the things that you can do a PhD dissertation on, he did one on the enslavement of Negroes in Louisiana. This is the author of Project 2025. So that's what makes Project 2025 very different than the 1981 Mandate of Leadership Manifesto. So they've been slowly but surely implementing this, okay? Now, Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, without sounding too wonkish, it was the pre-clearance requirement of the Department of Justice. So all the states, all 50 states, if you change anything as it relates to voting rights, you had to go through a process and a protocol of the Department of Justice. And then they will put that state in check, which made his job really, really easy, right? Because then you're going against your civil rights protections, voting right protections, and things of that nature. Well, when they removed that pre-clearance requirement, that's why 48 states went to work in 2013. All because that paragraph in Section 5. And see, so there's language. We as lawmakers know how to very cleverly put things in legislation, brothers, that can get us caught up. Like, there's a reason why God did not have me born back during Dr. King days. Because I would never agree to the Voting Rights Act over 2 sentences in there that says every 25 years, Congress will go and reauthorize for Negroes in this country to reauthorize their vote. No one else goes through that reauthorization. They cleverly put that in there. So every 25 years since that time, 1965, every 25 years, now I get it. You all didn't know about it because it was something done automatically until it was threatened. It was threatened during George Bush time, where there was starting to be this transition where folks in Congress started saying, well, what if we don't authorize it? We would have been like Gilligan on an island. We couldn't vote if they didn't approve it because they have to carry out the law, which would still make his job very difficult because it's in the law. The judge would say it's right there, that it's based on the privilege of Congress. So if Congress did not exercise that privilege every 25 years, none of us in this room can vote. There are 48 million of us in this country, 14.4% in accordance with the 2020 census. And if Congress did not reauthorize that, we wouldn't be able to vote, which is the reason why we asked for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which removed that provision and said we will vote without the reauthorization of Congress, just like everybody else. It will put us on an equal footing. And so Project 2025 is going after what we call the Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th. Now, I could talk to you more about the other things about Project 2025. I'm sure you've seen on TikTok, like you won't be able to do overtime, right? They will abolish Social Security, the Affordable Care Act, right? I mean, there's a laundry list, brothers, that Project 2025 will eradicate. It will consolidate the executive power with so much power. So there will no longer be checks and balance, which you need checks and balance at all levels, from federal, state, to local, to executive, judicial, and executive. And so Project 2025 will consolidate all that. But I wanted to give you the macro. I wanted to give you something that you're not going to see on TikTok, because the aim of Project 2025 is to get rid of these 4 amendments. Now, I had not mentioned the 4th Amendment that is going to go after, and that's the 19th Amendment. Anybody know what the 19th Amendment? Women. And so Project 2025 is going, that's the heart of it, the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 19th Amendment. And the reason why they're going after the 19th Amendment is because women, there are more women in the world, there are more women in Atlanta, there are more women. It's just the way God did it, right? I mean, he has a sense of humor. But women vote 98% of the time. Okay? And so if they took away these reconstructive amendments, the thing that tried to remedy the injury that the Constitution did against us from the beginning, that's what Kevin Roberts, and they found an individual that's stupid enough to go along with that plan. Okay? And that's the reason why November 5th is so important. But you can't talk about November 5th without talking about a couple more dates, and then I would love to entertain whatever questions.
Yeah, we'll open up for questions.
And that's October 7th. October 7th, you have to be registered to vote. The reason why I'm highlighting October 7th, because already in the state of Georgia, they're already removing folks off the ballot. They are purging. In fact, 300,000 so far. So you got to check your voter registration like daily now, because they just did it to my sister, who's been voting in Atlanta the last 20 years every year. And they removed her because they said that they sent her some mail and it came back. The crazy thing is, she's been living in the same house that she purchased for 20 years. Her address has not changed, and she just voted this past May, but she learned that she was removed in August. And so that's why it's important to make sure that your voter registration, because if she found out after October 7th, you know what happens? She will not be able to vote. That's right. So you got, so October 7th is the deadline.
I got something in the mail questioning if I was, man, this is no joke.
Yeah, but the Secretary of State just did something else where they created a website portal that will allow for someone else with your information to remove you from the polls. Right? Am I lying, Brother Davis? They just started this portal, and we did not ask for it from the legislative branch. So the Secretary of State just did this. Okay? And so that's the first date, October 7th. Check every day. Check every day. If they remove me, y'all know I'm going to turn Atlanta upside down. Okay? Because your voting rights is the most sacred thing that you have, that our ancestors could not do that we can. The next date is October 15th. And that's when you can start voting in person. I highly recommend that you vote early. Do not wait for November 5th. Because if you go to the polls October 15th and you discover that something went wrong in the system, do not do a provisional ballot. Please do not. Because that's the very first thing they're going to offer to you. Here's a provisional ballot. We don't count provisional ballots in Georgia. They give you 3 days to cure, and 98% of the folks do not come back in those 3 days. It's a placebo. So don't do it. So if they tell you, you go there October 15th, and they say, well, we got a problem with your driver license or something mismatched, say, okay, not a problem. Let me call, and I'll come back and vote. Well, no, you can do a provision. No, I don't want to do a provisional ballot. I'm going to come back. Do that. Powers these individuals to disqualify your vote. Senate Bill 202 and Senate Bill 189 has the language that empowers these boards across these 159 counties to make the call. So if they say, well, that looks like a little check mark, was it there, it shouldn't be there, they can decertify, they can do away, discard your vote. What's the bill number? Senate Bill 202 and Senate Bill 189. Senate Bill 202 has about 98 pages, and Senate Bill 189 has about 27 pages. And so, again, it's by design. The fourth and final thing, and then I'd love to open up to conversation. As it relates to Project 2025, there is also a move afoot to try to dupe us right now. They'll call it, without using his name, 47. And when you go to 47 website, he'll say that I don't know any of the folks in Project 2025. 140 individuals that helped construct Project 2025 came out of his cabinet and his administration. 30 of them are doing the videos, the tutorials. And it's right there on Project 2025. So they may say one thing on TikTok and I guess they don't call it Twitter no more, X, right? They'll say one thing in social media, but look at their websites, look at the information, brothers. We cannot get duped, as in the words of Malcolm X, hoodwink, bamboozled, tailpipe, none of that stuff. Not now, never. Okay? So yeah, I would love to open up for
Questions.
For questions.
So I live in Paulding County, and what I have been voting, I've been out there for about 23 years. I've been voting at the same place for that 23 years. In the mail, I received something that says, oh, you're no longer voting there, you got to vote here. And so I'm just wondering if that's another tactic that's being used in Atlanta and the surrounding counties?
Yeah, that's a great question, good brother. So yes, so in the state of Georgia, we have the right to change your voting precincts every 10 years. That's the reason why the census is so important, because every 10 years we'll change the lines, we'll change everything. It gives us the authority to be able to do that. And so it's part of the trickery, because those precincts, I'm sure most of them in the urban areas, we move them off of the public transit line. And some of them now, they're very clever. They will move them from schools and churches to police precincts and sheriff, those kind of things. So it's another tactic to try to intimidate us. And again, when you have chaos, conflict, and confusion, my precinct used to be at this church, but it's no longer there. It just adds to that whole mix to disenfranchise our votes.
Yeah, my precinct moved my voting precinct moved also. But you talked about, when you were talking about the renewal of our vote in Congress, can you expound on how important it is to vote for your Congress people as well, and not only just vote on the president because of the linkages and whatnot?
Yeah, so good brother, I appreciate you highlighting that, because listen, I'm 58. I'm about to turn 59. I know I don't look it. I got 7 children. The oldest is 30. The youngest is 18. And I tell my 7 that your vote is very important. And every election cycle, they're going to try to find a boogeyman. Last election cycle, it was CRT. Y'all remember that? This election cycle is DEI, right? Then they try to add a little, okay, you got to be concerned about Gaza. Well, Gaza is 10,000 miles away. And I feel for our brothers and sisters over in Gaza. But I got to be worried about what's happening 10 blocks away from me. Because those who are 10,000 miles away, I really can't do anything about. I really can't. Now, when I was in the Navy, yes. But I can do something about those who are just killed 10 blocks away from me. So don't allow for us to be duped. And the reason why we encourage everyone to vote from the top of the ticket all the way down, and I know, I ain't gonna jeopardize no one 501c3, but y'all can read between the lines, because they taught us in school that we only vote every 4 years, and that's not true. We vote every year. You're either gonna be voting on a sheriff, a DA, a Congress folks, president. You're gonna be voting every year. And everybody plays a part of this Voting Rights Act. And whoever's in power decides. So every 10 years, we decide whoever's in power in that state gets to write the lines. Whoever's in power, when it's time every 25 years to reauthorize our vote until they pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, it's important. And so you got to go from the top all the way down, even to include the questions, because the questions are also clever, because you all are taxpayers, and we use that information from those questions. Those questions typically are bypassed, and they intentionally put them at the end, because we will say, we gave you the opportunity to tell us how you want us to invest your tax dollars. It's up to you that if you respond or not. So they do things in the most clever way.
Peace and greetings. Thank you so much for your time and your work that you've been doing over the years, Brother Jackson.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, where can we go to be able to learn more about Project 25? Also, is there recommendations as far as specifically who to vote for locally and abroad? And also, what can we do in addition to voting?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, good brother. So there is an official Project 2025 website, You can Google it. I don't like to advertise it, but you can Google it, and you will see on it. Now, I would tell you, it's 922 pages. Don't try to read all 922 pages. Go to that section that you're interested about. My first section I went to was the veterans, because they're going to remove military veterans benefits. And so, so I wanted to know, I've already did my 22 years in the Navy. So you will now negatively impact me if the wrong person get in office. So that was the first section I went to. The next section I went to, because I'm taking care of my 87-year-old aunt, was the Social Security. And I don't need my 87-year-old aunt losing her Social Security. And so just try to, when you do go to their website, just go to the section, because they wrote it like a newspaper, right? Go to the section that's interesting you. There's a section about public education. They've been going after public education for a long time, right? And so go there. The next thing I would say, I'll meet with you afterwards, and then I'll tell you exactly how you should vote. So I don't want to jeopardize nobody 501c3.
Yes, Brother Jackson, and I would ask any of our state reps in the Georgia General Assembly the same question. We talked about sovereign a few moments ago. Because Georgia's a sovereign state with its own constitution, will any of our constitutional paragraphs be a buffer against Project 2025? And if it's not, what is being done in the General Assembly to bolster our Constitution to be able to stay that particular diabolical plan off?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Rambo. I appreciate you asking it. So here's the other thing about Project 2025. Y'all know what a democracy is, right? So our democracy will be no longer. And I'm not saying it in the most hyperbolic way. When you consolidate all the powers to the executive branch, that's called an autocracy, not a democracy. And so every state will no longer be sovereign. It will be under rule. In Project 2025, it doesn't refer to folks as citizens. You know the word they use? Subjects. They use the word subjects. 248 years ago, the early framers, they ran away from that, but they brought these ideas with them. Project 2025 will resurrect them. Okay? So, yeah, our Constitution can never absurd the federal Constitution.